now listening to the Arsenal Therapy Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the 15-minute show, part of the Arsenal Therapy Podcast. I am once again joined by TM Talks Ball, who's running an incredible channel on YouTube, a great Twitter account, and does a lot of scouting football content, not just on Arsenal, but he is Arsenal mad like the rest of us. Today, we're going to talk about Kai Havertz. Talk to me about Kai, because he's someone that you've got a bit of backlash because you've shared some comps of his top performances.
Yeah, Kai Havertz isn't a player that a lot of people likes, but he just does a lot of things which you need from a centre forward. I feel as though when you're looking at a player, you're looking at the centre forward role. It can't always just be about putting the ball into the back of the net. It needs to be, how is your movement? How do you play football? How does it impact the team around you? Are you maximising the players in and around you? And I feel like Kai Havertz is one of the best players in terms of, he may necessarily not be the best himself, but he certainly does maximize the players in and around him, like your Sakas of this world.
Yeah, and you mentioned centre forward skill sets. One of them with Kai is his heading ability. It's something that's massively underlooked. And his post-shot XG from headers is 2.37. He ranks very, very highly on the list of Premier League strikers. And it's something that I think is massively overlooked. But for us, he's not just that centre forward. He's one of our press leaders. He's a space creator. He's a box dominator. He's a link-up player. He's asked to do a bit of everything. Do you ever think that because Kai is asked to do so much, we've never been able to fully zone in on like maximizing one or two of his talents in the way someone like a Viktor Gyökeres has been able to do?
I wouldn't really say that. I feel as though Kai Havertz is more than comfortable being able to do the roles that he's asked to do. I feel as though this idea is that Arsenal purely need a goal scorer. We kind of forget what he does off the ball, what he does on the ball, impacting other players. And I feel as though, you know, the way that Arteta uses him is brilliant. I genuinely believe it is brilliant in terms of really making Arsenal an attacking threat going forward, whether that is pressing, like you've mentioned, whether that is in terms of in the box as well. He's very good at creating space, for sort of getting the ball in the box, because getting the ball in the box is harder than it actually looks. You've got to be able to move. You've got to be physical to be able to move defenders out the way. And I feel as though Kai Havertz has so many good qualities, not many elite qualities. And I feel as though that is the problem in terms of when Arsenal look at him.
Yeah, and if you look at his heat maps at Arsenal, he's a player that's been used all over the pitch. He's a player that I would actually say his elite quality is his ability to move, to find space. That's his true elite quality. As a technician, I would say he's above average, fairly good, but not elite. As a ball striker, he's not elite. As his aerial ability is probably close to elite, but the one thing that is truly elite is his ability to create space for his teammates and know where to stand at the right times on the pitch. But talk to me about his usage as a 9 at Arsenal, and also his usage as a second striker and an 8, because he's been asked to do all three of those roles, sometimes all at once within a game.
When I think of Arsenal, I think of where I think Kai Havertz was at his best. I always look towards that 4-4-2. And that was when Martin Odegaard was out injured. We had to adapt. We had Trossard and Havertz up front. It was either Jesus and Havertz as well. And I just looked at how fluid Arsenal was. You saw Trossard on the left wing. You saw Kai Havertz receiving in the right-hand side spaces. And we created a lot of opportunities. So when we're looking at Kai Havertz as a number 9, he allows floating, he allows fluidity in the front line. And ultimately, if you want to confuse opposition defenders, you need your centre forward, your left wing, your right wing to be able to rotate freely. And Kai Havertz, I think, is one of the best at rotating freely and allowing other players to occupy his spaces. But then again, as we can see on this heat map, we can see on the right-hand side, next to Saka, it's quite a space which he enjoys going to. And I think we'll get onto Gyökeres a bit later. But I think that's very important when you consider that signing as well.
Yeah, and his chances created, the majority of them come from the right-hand side. There are a few cutbacks at the edge of the left, but predominantly his chance creation comes from in and around the right-hand side of the box, with a couple of cutbacks inside the box as well. But you are looking at a right-sided dominant player. Yeah. And that was something we saw at the beginning of last season in particular, with Kai and Saka swapping positions quite a lot. So we regularly saw, and I think the Brighton game was a great example of this, the two of them were switching. And right at the end, Arsenal almost scored to win the game. When Kai burst down the right-hand side and put a great cross in, and Saka's a toenail from putting that ball in the back of the net. And that was a point where Arsenal were quite clearly exhausted. We've been down to 10 men for a while, but it was showing that these two have the ability to rotate. Do you expect to see more of that this season? Because for me, regardless of who's signed, Kai Havertz is still going to play a huge volume of football for Arsenal.
Absolutely. And I do feel as though the relationship he is sort of building with Bukayo Saka is very underrated. When you look at most of the goals that Saka has created, they are for Havertz. And we're thinking about, of course, that Brighton game, the first goal scored by Havertz. They have this sort of understanding of each other. And those things cannot be understated. Relationships on the pitch are ultimately going to help you, because if you know where your mate is going to be, you know what run your mate is going to make, you can ultimately unlock these teams. And I feel as though getting more rhythm, more games between them can only mean a better thing for Arsenal in terms of scoring more goals.
Absolutely. And some of the chances that Kai did create were with him being more central. We saw against Bayern Munich last year, playing in Odegaard. And another example was, I mentioned cutbacks and coming into the box and playing that ball across the face of goal. Again, this one, he gets the ball, he kind of chips it over the Tottenham defense. And again, it's an opportunity we should be scoring. But Kai has that creativity in his locker that he maybe doesn't always show. We know Kai can get the ball trapped under his feet at times, but similarly, he's a player that can have an absolutely exquisite first touch, take the ball out of his feet and move it very, very well. His touch map is all over the park. It really is. You can see a lot of the touches inside our box. Many of those will be defensive clearances. And then you see touches at left back, right back, but most heavily congested on the right wing and inside the box. So again, he's someone that is more than happy going all over the park. And a lot of these will be headers as well. And I've got a couple of examples. So the first example is, well, first two examples are him against Konate last year, which in my opinion was one of his best performances for Arsenal, because Konate ended up being sent off in this game. And a big part of it was Kai Havertz continually took him for a walk. No matter where Kai went, Konate followed him. And he got booked for silly challenges because he didn't know where Kai wanted to go. And he was taking him into areas where he didn't want to go. So talk to me about this, because these are two examples of Havertz just taking a defender out of space to create space for other people.
Yeah, that is so key. And I think about Arsenal in terms of why our Big Six record has been so good. And we can't ignore Kai Havertz's role in that, because players like Konate, he's one of the best physical wide defenders in the Premier League in terms of he's so comfortable being dragged across the pitch. He's really a strong jeweler. But Kai Havertz's ability to sort of use his body and sort of make defenders feel some type of way. And I always think of that game against Liverpool. And I remember Van Dijk's little kick out on Kai Havertz. It's small things like that. He just manages to gain those extra yards, gain that sort of position with his body as well. And Arsenal are able to play off of that. And we are ultimately beat these teams when we have a centre forward who's able to really trap the ball, is really able to dominate the centre halves and allow our wingers like Saka, like Trossard in the clip in that GIF where he ended up scoring, to really express their ability.
Absolutely. And again, this is another example of him taking defenders out where they don't want to be. This one's at Old Trafford against Man United. He's gone right out to the touchline, given us that ability to go long from David Raya. And that's something that's vastly overlooked as well, is Kai Havertz gives Arsenal tactical flexibility with his ability to go long, run into space, duel with defenders and win those aerial battles. But also, even if he doesn't win them, he's taken a player out of position where they're very uncomfortable heading the ball and they're not optimized to give it to a teammate. And that's a big thing for me. But ultimately, people want to see Kai scoring goals. And I've got up his XG map here. He's a player that just marginally underperformed his XG last season, 9.56 with 9 goals scored. I'm more than happy with that. I think 0.18 per XG per shot is on the low end. I would like to see a bit more. I'd like to see an improvement in his ball striking. But what I'd be really interested in seeing is how Kai's XG per shot weighed up in the first 2 or 3 months of the season versus kind of December, January, where he was very visibly tired, and you could see that tiredness in his ball striking and in his dueling. Whereas you look at the Brighton goal, the PSG game, the Wolves at the beginning of the season, and Southampton in particular, Kai's ball striking was very, very clean. It was firm. He had these qualities in his game. But do you think that adding a player like Viktor Gyökeres alongside this, where you've got someone who is one-dimensional, it's brute force, but it's very clean in terms of how he strikes the ball, will really complement Kai? Because at 26, I'm not sure this is ever going to improve.
Definitely. I feel as though, firstly, on Kai Havertz, he's just a very hot and cold player in terms of when you look at times where he's scoring goals, they're always in a row. When you see games in which he isn't scoring, again, they're always in a row. So he's that sort of player who's not going to consistently give you, okay, Kai will score here, Kai will score here. And that sort of shows in his ball striking as well, in terms of it's only in certain periods where he's very, very good, then he's very, very poor. And on that point of Viktor Gyökeres, I certainly do believe Kai Havertz sort of being in the side with Viktor Gyökeres would be very, very good. And we're thinking about getting Gyökeres in the right spaces, getting Gyökeres in positions where he can really maximize the ability to use his ball striking. And Kai Havertz would be able to drag defenders away, creating space for Gyökeres to run beyond, to use that ball striking in the box as well. When I think about those low blocks, those really defensive structures, I think Kai can really dominate the defenders in the box, and Gyökeres can really feed off of that, because ultimately for what Gyökeres is, he is actually genuinely a good finisher, and he's very hungry for scoring goals, and that is a quality which we can't underestimate in terms of really looking at him as a player.
Yeah, and with Kai, it's often said he was signed as a midfielder and wasn't good enough, so he was moved up front, but actually he played his first competitive game for Arsenal as a striker in the Community Shield. In this game, he had a real stunning game, but he missed a couple of big chances. This is one of them. So Odegaard plays this ball into Saka, cut back, Kai puts it straight at the keeper, but it shows in the first frame, Kai's pointing at where he wants that ball. He's telling his teammates, I'm going to hit the penalty spot, and he does. Saka pulls it back. He knows what to do. And this was it was a early showing of what he could do in that area. He went on to score goals from this position against Brighton and against Newcastle last season, but the early signs were there. And what's interesting here as well is Odegaard gets that ball and plays it straight through the lines, straight head up, and Saka's running in behind. That was something we didn't see a lot of last season. Havertz was one of the players that was having to create space and make those runs. So quite often there was no one in the box. So again, I see with the likes of a Gyökeres coming in, if Havertz is doing this kind of stuff, he will be more of the Saka pulling the defenders away and allowing Gyökeres in behind too. Let's be honest, is going to gobble up any chance he gets like that. Definitely. And again, we saw it in the City game where Havertz was really able to press, and this is in the league, the 5-1. It's Rice closing down. It's Havertz in the space. He ends up winning that ball back and gets it, plays in Odegaard. It wasn't the cleanest pass in the world. Actually, this is the one he missed. But again, it was Arsenal's ability to close down that space and Havertz to be in press. And his head didn't drop after that. He had one of his best Arsenal games this day, but everyone remembers that one miss.
Yeah.
So you mentioned he blows hot and cold. Confidence is an issue for Havertz in front of goal. He never drops his head in terms of his dueling. That side of the game, the run and the intensity that he plays at always remains consistent. But do you think having a player in the team like Gyökeres, who's going to take some of the weight of goals off him, will actually help improve him in that area because he's carrying less of a burden?
I think that's genuinely a very, very good point in terms of having players who also will have the responsibility of scoring goals will take the weight off of Kai. And you talked about his confidence. He is a player that needs love. We've heard Mikel Arteta talk about it multiple times in press conferences about Kai Havertz. Let's love him. We remember the chant going round and how that sort of elevated his game. It's small things like that which aren't necessarily related to on the pitch, but off the pitch, which can really help someone like Kai Havertz reach his A game. Someone like Gyökeres as well reach his A game, because they both know together, okay, we have the responsibility to score goals for Arsenal, but that weight is sort of shared, and it can be really, really important going forward for Arsenal.
Yeah, and again, when it comes to him blowing hot and cold in front of goal, you mentioned the cluster of goals. We saw it really starting to come to life against Sheffield United last season, where he got in, he came off, he started this game, runs through and smashes the ball in the bottom corner. But it was his ability to carry that really impressed in this moment, because we were starting to see flashes of it. But this was a game that really showed that he was more than comfortable in the left 8 position. But he only played left 8 6 times in the second half of last season, which, contrary to popular belief, he didn't play as a centre forward in every game. We saw his qualities, and again, he has the ability to play in midfield, play as a second striker, and feed off a main 9. I think that was probably more of the plan, that him and Jesus would be more of an interchange in front line, as opposed to Havertz playing left 8 the way Declan Rice or Granit Xhaka did. And that confidence kept growing. And we saw the Brentford game last season when Kai went into 9. This was just a top-notch header. Again, he's in the position you want him to be in, and he puts that ball in the back of the net very, very firmly, aggressive header. And this was a player filled with confidence. But we want to see that confident player more. That's part of the issue that he's got right now. Where does the relationship with him and Gyökeres fit in, and how do they kind of coexist on the pitch together? Because they do like different zones.
I feel as though this is where we're talking about potentially the new Arsenal attacking dynamics, because when we think about someone like Gyökeres with a Havertz, you're just thinking these guys don't need to have a specific zone to be in. You know, I think Gyökeres in particular is better maximized off the shoulder. I feel as though when you have Gyökeres purely focused on going off the shoulder, running in behind, that is where he can really show what he's made of. And you have Kai Havertz doing what I call the dirty work, receiving balls, allowing us still to be able to use David Raya, ball over the top to Havertz to be able to take it down. And I also think towards games like Atalanta, and games in which we really struggled against these aggressive centre halves that like to really press onto you, someone like Gyökeres will allow you to stretch the pitch, move those aggressive centre halves backwards, and ultimately that leaves more space for players in the pockets like your Odegaards, like a Havertz if he was to play as well. So I feel as though this can be a really good duo up front in terms of Arsenal really sort of being a different animal in terms of their attacking dynamics. And although many people say I hate Gyökeres, I genuinely sort of do see a Havertz and Gyökeres duo up front being really effective in certain games.
Yeah, and you mentioned playing off the shoulder. He's a player that does like to spin his man, whereas Kai's a player that likes to duel. He likes to really compete shoulder to shoulder with his man. Do you have concerns about that with Gyökeres? Because there's mixed opinions on this. Some Premier League defenders are very, very good. There's also plenty of bad Premier League defenders that can be thrown very, very easily. So do you think there's almost like complementing styles, or is Gyökeres' obsession with spinning his man a bit of a concern?
What is really weird, and I do point to the Cannon podcast and George who really sort of put this on, is Gyökeres shoulder to shoulder against any centre half in the world is very, very good. He genuinely is very, very strong. But for some reason, when there's contact in his back, he genuinely really struggles to keep hold of the ball. And this is where my sort of thing comes in terms of having Gyökeres as a lone 9 and his ability to deal with contact in his back as not really something that I want to be seeing. I'm not saying Gyökeres won't be able to develop a skill such like this, because we've seen Mikel Arteta is very effective in terms of getting players to improve their ability in contact. But I do feel if we really want to maximize Gyökeres, you don't want him to be the guy receiving with centre halves up against him. You want him to be the guy really on the shoulder, using his sort of ability to go on the outside or the inside, 1v1 versus the fullback, which is actually very, very good. And I feel as though, you know, that is where we are with Viktor Gyökeres as a player. Maximize him well, and you'll have a really good player to be able to impact games. Maximize him in the wrong way, and it's going to be a concern in terms of what he offers in the pure basics of a number 9.
Yeah, well, interestingly, you mentioned kind of his hold-up play and him between two centre-backs. What I find really interesting is Kai Havertz is a true hold-up play striker. He uses his wingspan well. He gets down low. He gets that leg out and he protects the ball. He makes sure that the centre-back can't get around him. Very basic coaching 101 of a centre-forward. He is brilliant at that. By contrast, Viktor Gyökeres is more of a link-up play. He likes to come deep, pop it off to a teammate, and then turn and spin. More like a Jamie Vardy, even Lukaku. People see Lukaku and see this huge, big, strong player. But actually, what Lukaku is better at is popping it off and turning and flying in behind, which is why Roberto Martinez used him effectively as a winger. But with Gyökeres, I do see that kind of quick pop off, turn and go and run in behind. So ultimately, I think these are skill sets that really complement each other. We've mentioned Havertz on the right as well. Gyökeres is a player that channel runs predominantly on the left. He really, really likes to get in aggressively on that side. Do you think that'll lead to an improvement in Arsenal's left side and maybe free up Saka a bit as well?
Yeah, I've talked about it before in terms of someone like Viktor Gyökeres, of course, in terms of his movement towards the left, will mean the left winger can come more centrally. And I always point towards that game of Gabriel Martinelli in the second half against Liverpool at Anfield and how comfortable he was in those central spaces. Someone like Gyökeres would allow Gabriel Martinelli to come more central and sort of be the player that we really want to see from him, taking more shots, because ultimately statistics do show Gabriel Martinelli is one of Arsenal's best shooters, so getting him more in those zones. And in terms of Kai Havertz, being on those right-hand side spaces is going to really help Bukayo Saka, because one thing I've noticed, especially with Odegaard, is he doesn't really make those underlaps. We always have the overlap with a Jurriën Timber or a Ben White, but the underlap is really underused and underutilized by Arsenal. So Kai Havertz is very comfortable. Of course, I uploaded the comp against PSG. You could already see the underlaps that Kai Havertz was doing, and ultimately it did break down the PSG defense, and that's really, really important.
Yeah, and finally, just before we wrap up, Kai has increased his muscle strength quite a bit. He's bulked up quite a bit. How much do you see that change in his game this season?
Yeah, I feel as though, obviously you can't just look at somebody and assume that they're going to be this muscly, strong guy. But I feel as though in terms of getting Havertz more in tune with his body, because we've seen Kai Havertz at Leverkusen, he's grown a lot. And it's been sort of this adaptation in terms of his body and how to use his body. He's really just getting to grips to who he is now as a player. And I feel as though maybe gaining this sort of muscle, gaining this sort of extra strength could help him really adjust the player that he is. And I feel like a lot of people do forget Kai Havertz is only 26 years old. This isn't someone that's now heading towards their 30s. So ultimately, if he's able to use this extra mass to help with his upper body strength, it's going to be really impactful for Arsenal.
Yeah, and given Kai's fitness record, his ability to kind of recover and so on, he's a player that I expect to have a fairly long career and someone that I expect to actually peak a bit later, despite coming through as a wonder kid very early on. I think he had that post-growth slump and he's now, as you say, discovering his own body and working out his own game and what that is.
Yeah.
But big thanks for joining the show. It's been really, really great having you. Please drop him a follow at TM Talks Ball on YouTube and on Twitter. Please hit the like button. Please subscribe to the channel. And please drop us a comment. Tell us about our favorite topic and a player that is fairly divisive within the Arsenal fan base. How often do you think Kai Havertz will play? Where will he fit in this season? How will he link up with Madueke, Gyökeres, Saka, Martinelli, and so on? And what does he need to do to really kick on this season? Thank you for joining. Have a great day, and we'll see you all very soon.